Hello, everyone. Welcome to what used to be the 21 Hats podcast and is now the Business Advantage TV podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. In this week's conversation, our business owners talk about their approaches to digital marketing. After years of relying on Google AdWords as his only form of marketing, Paul Downs tells us that he stopped his $12,000 a month spend on AdWords a couple of years ago, choosing instead to rely simply on organic traffic. What happened when he stopped paying for marketing? His sales actually went up. But now, with fewer people looking to buy high-end boardroom tables because of the crisis, Paul's considering shifting tactics again. I'm wondering whether I should sort of go on the offensive, he tells us, and try to increase my marketing in the face of these declines in sales, or whether nothing I do would make any difference at this point. In this episode, we also talk about whether it's better to manage your own digital marketing or to hire a specialist. Our panelists disagree. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations will, if nothing else, let owners know they are not alone in facing these challenges. This week's lineup features Karen Clark Cole, who is CEO of Blink, a user experience research and design firm in Seattle, Paul Downs, who is founder and CEO of Paul Downs Cabinet Makers, which is based outside of Philadelphia and makes custom conference tables, and Laura Zander, who is CEO of Jimmy Bean's Wool, a digital version of a neighborhood yarn shop that is based in Reno, Nevada, and also has a wholesale supplier, Madeline Tosh, in Fort Worth, Texas. The episode is titled, We Kind of Live or Die by Google. Karen, we haven't talked to you in a while. Welcome back. What's been going on?
I've missed you guys. Let's see, we're looking at the numbers, and for me, I'm trying to get a bigger sense of how the COVID has impacted us and how it will impact us. So we're largely trying to create crystal balls.
Have you learned anything? Have you figured it out? Where are we going?
My feeling is that we're going to, for us anyway, in the services business, we're going to have a busy second half of the year. It's becoming the new normal of how to adjust and how to deal with it and how to go on living our lives. And so certainly that's the way it is where I live in Seattle. There's, you see now everybody just is out, and, I've got 20 masks for each outfit, and we embrace it and you just wear them. And so, going into the office used to be, well, I'm going to wait until we don't have to wear masks. That's what was the general, feeling. But now it's like, oh no, we're dying to get back and see some other people. We're going to wear a mask. We don't care. It's normal now.
Have you fully opened up your office again?
In Seattle, we are open. In our California offices, we're still not allowed.
Is everybody coming in?
No. So we're still encouraging all employees across the country to work from home as much and whenever possible until further notice. And so, we're thinking that's the end of the year at least. But we have some in-person research that needs to happen, and our clients want to get going on that. So we opened the office in Seattle as soon as we were allowed to by the governor, which was beginning of July. And so that's still limited. There's only people in the office who really want to be there or who need to be there for their work.
Do you have any thoughts long-term on how you might reconfigure things, or are you still figuring it out?
Yep. Trying to be creative. So it's an incredible global experiment that we've been able to participate in, which is, can we get work done from anywhere? And the answer is, for us, yes, absolutely. Is it what we want and like? Not necessarily, no. I mean, everybody's still, we're hearing over and over and over that our employees, they still want to come together. They miss each other. We're looking at changing some of our office space to be more open type meeting rooms. So having whiteboards as dividers instead of walls. So there still is free moving space so people feel more comfortable coming in there. And then we're looking at other ways to use our space. So we're renting part of our space out to a client who needs it, which we wouldn't normally have done.
I have an idea.
We're open to a sublease. Yeah. What?
I think you need some really nice boardroom tables.
Are you selling?
Paul is.
She volunteered.
That's a good segue, Laura. Paul, last week you told us that you were seeing the initial signs of a collapse of your sales. Anything new this week?
Well, yeah, I started to actually trim costs. If you think about our whole company as a series of different functions, and a job passes through these different functions, when the work starts to dry up from a drop in sales, then the project managers and engineers are sort of at the head of the snake, and then the shop floors can still be busy working on stuff we've already committed to. So I spoke to my 2 project managers this morning about moving one to part-time and reducing the salary of the other. And, everybody has been warned for weeks and months now that in our particular business, it's unlikely to be thriving for a while. And so I've shown them the numbers and told them it was coming. And today was the day, and it seemed to, it wasn't a surprise to either of these people, and they took it very well. And so what's the lesson? I always try to give people a view of what I see on the horizon, and then keep them updated as it moves closer, so that if it's good news or bad news, at least it's not a surprise. And I think that people appreciate that, maybe, or maybe they go and as soon as they leave my office, then they have a very different reaction. I don't really know.
Paul, how do you find people worry more than they should, though? That's what I found, is that balance is really delicate of giving people the right amount of information so they're not too worried about it.
I don't know the answer of exactly where the line is. My bias has always been to give people more information and try to be more transparent. And I think I'm probably one of the most transparent business owners you'll ever meet. And I haven't experienced any downside of that with the people I've had working for me. I think that I would not recommend that everybody do this for every employee, because it's a big world out there and there's different businesses and different situations, and maybe it's not the right choice, but it works for me and my company.
Do you have any sense that what you did today is rippling through the office, that others are worried that more shoes are about to drop?
Probably. And, we're going to be having a meeting that we normally have on Friday afternoons with the project managers, the engineers, and the shop floor managers. And I'm going to tell them at that meeting. I mean, it's going to be a topic of discussion, because it's going to change how the team works. One of the team members is not going to be here as often, and we're going to reconfigure what she does so that she's doing a slightly different job. And it's like, you can't hide it anyway. So why not just get it out there and talk about it? And so we'll see how it goes. Everybody knows that there's a problem in this world right now. It's not our fault, but we do have to react to it. And I've made clear to all of them that the company has to survive, and that's the best chance for all of us. So they'll connect the dots.
I want to move on to our main topic, which is a topic Paul and Laura, you guys brought up last week just as I closed the podcast. One of the worst things a human being can do. I don't know why you did it to me, but
really,
Lauren,
that's the worst.
But I'm going to give you another chance.
I think Lauren leads a very sheltered life, frankly.
Yeah, seriously.
We all know that's true. You guys started a really interesting conversation about digital marketing. Paul, I think you started it by talking about some issues that you're considering for your business.
Well, we kind of live or die by Google, and I have had a long relationship with Google over the years, and I'm wondering whether I should sort of go on the offensive and try to increase my marketing in the face of these declining sales, or whether nothing I do would make any difference at this point, and it's just a question of waiting it out.
Which way are you leaning?
I'm not leaning yet. I'm still in the looking phase. I spent some time just doing Google searches on various things over the last few days, and I do know, or I'm noticing, that what appears on the screen is really, really different than it did in my memory a few years ago, or again in my memory when we started off with Google in 2004. And so that what I saw in the search strings that matter to me, which revolve around boardroom tables and custom boardroom tables, is a lot more ad presence before you get to any organic results. And then also a cluttering of the page with shopping results, image results. I mean, it was literally a scroll down before you saw a single thing that was what you would call a traditional organic result. And that makes me think, oh, what do I do here? Because we have over the years both bought AdWords. I did that for a long time and spent a lot of money on it. And then also shifted to a strategy that was mainly about maintaining an organic presence and not heavy on AdWords for the last 3 years.
How did you do that? How did you go about maintaining an organic presence?
Well, we've always had an organic presence. That's one of the main things that I think is an underappreciated lesson of digital marketing, is that the organic search results favor the incumbents heavily. That the person who was number one last week and last year in any given search string is likely to still be there unless they really screw it up, because they got to be number one probably through a combination of luck, but also being a pretty good search result. And so the concept that you can just knock that person out of position strikes me as being questionable. Although many digital marketing firms will promise that you will move from wherever, whatever obscurity you're in today up into a good position, I just don't see that as being feasible in most cases.
Are you saying that you pretty much just stopped buying AdWords and just started relying on the SEO that you'd built up over the years?
I did. And I believe it was the beginning of 2018. From 2004 till 2018, I had a monthly AdWord budget that would run between $10,000 and $12,000 a month. And, I gave Google a lot more money over those years than I ever made myself. And I decided to just stop it and see what would happen. Because even though $12,000 a month sounds like a lot of money, to Google, it's literally nothing. And so they don't have anything other than their robots, managing my account. It's not like there's some person who I call and we chat about my ad spend. No, that never happens. And I know a couple of business owners who spend 10 times what I do every month, and they don't have any personal interactions either.
Yeah, but I was just sorry, Paul, why is that? Why aren't you talking to an account manager there on a monthly basis?
I've never met an account manager at Google, never heard from Google. I've spent more than $1 million at Google, and the only unsolicited interaction I ever had with them was they sent me a travel mug once.
But you've never reached out to them either and just said, hey, I want somebody to talk to once a month to help me review my results?
I did have one interaction in 2012 that was prompted by a column I wrote in the Times, and I signed an NDA about it, so I'm probably about to get sued or something. But it was, I went to Google headquarters, spent a day with their team, and came away with sort of an impression of them that was pretty negative, to be frank. People who were focused on the sort of automatic aspects of Google and had no feeling whatsoever for the human side of any kind of commercial interaction. And, I could talk about this at length, but let's just say that if I was spending that amount of money at an airline or a casino or any other business other than Google, they would have assigned someone to me, and that person's job would be to keep me happy. And the fact that they never did that, it's like, and this may be naive, but I view Google as being sort of like the volcano god. They're there, and you have to deal with them. You don't have any rules for how to deal with them. You just got to hope for the best and sacrifice in some way you hope is acceptable. Do things that you believe are going to work. But you don't actually get any information about whether it's working or not, other than, whatever results you have.
Well, Laura, tell us, have you done what you just suggested? How has that worked for you?
That hasn't been our experience at all.
Good. I'm about to learn something. This will be great.
Tell us about it.
Well, I mean, ours, and I haven't talked to an account manager directly in years, but our social media manager, she has a monthly call. My husband, who set up all the AdWords and stuff, I mean, he used to have a call constantly. And I'm trying to think. We used to spend about $25,000 a month, and now we're down to about $12,000, but we're getting better results than we did at $25,000 because of the calls that we're having. Because we have, the flip side to what you're saying. I understand, like, the machine has no feelings and is a big robotic entity, but a lot of these account managers are, they're trying to get promoted. They're at the beginning of their career and they're hungry, and they want to have really good results and be really helpful. So we have people and they change.
When did you start? When did you start doing that?
2007.
And that's when you were assigned an account manager?
I don't remember exactly. I'm sure from the very beginning, but we're not, it sounds like I have a different, I'm not Eastern Pennsylvania. So I'm Southern, which means that if I want something, I'm just going to go get it. So I didn't wait. We don't wait for somebody to assign somebody. We call and say, hey, what do you got that I can have? That's kind of our whole approach.
Who did you call?
Google.
What phone number is Google?
Mr. Google.
Yeah, I called Sergey.
How did you find Sergey?
There you can.
The internet?
Yeah, Google. I Googled him. I would have to dig in and look and see exactly, but probably just, I don't know. We probably called 10 different numbers until we got somebody.
There's an AdWords department. I'm sure they have a small business division. Laura, can you tell us a little bit about those conversations? What information were you looking for from them? What did they tell you? How did they help you refine your search? Did they really help you save money?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And I'd just say that it's the same thing with Facebook. And I know that Facebook is not your audience, Paul, in terms of trying to sell, but, they have the same thing. If you spend enough money, they invite you, like you said, they invite you to trainings. They, you have multiple account managers. You've got all kinds of stuff. But you have to push for it. You have to pitch yourself that you're important and that you could grow or whatever it is. From the Google standpoint, and again, I've only been on one or two of these calls myself. My team has been on them. But it's just how to adjust the words and what. Picking
keywords?
Yeah, it's picking keywords, picking budgets, looking at the trends, looking, how to use the tools. They have so many tools so that it could be self-service. I spent a lot more time on the Facebook side of it, and Doug spent more time on the Google side of it. But they all have trainings. You can get certified in Google AdWords. And so you go through that process and become certified yourself. And then you've got somebody that you can ask. And so I don't have the super specifics about it other than our manager, Alex, she reports every month. She's just like, holy cow, our ROI this month was blah, 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 which is, just as much as it was the previous month. I know that they have been very, very helpful in helping us trim our budget on the stuff that's not working, so in our case, selling yarn, we've always been better off putting more budget toward very specific search terms versus really general search terms. So we don't spend much money on yarn or how to knit. We spend money on Madeline Tosh vintage yarn because that's a very specific thing. So they've really helped us with the strategy of that, of when to be specific and when to be generic, and then help give you the data to support that and make those decisions.
Why would you spend money on a brand name like that? Isn't your client likely to find you if they're searching by Madeline Tosh? Aren't they likely to find you anyway?
Sure, but aren't they more likely to remember you if you show up a few times?
I see.
So it's just brand impressions.
Well, let me react to this. It's my own personality is that I always like to do everything myself. Like if you dropped me in the cockpit of a 747, I'd start pushing buttons and seeing if I could get the thing to fly. So that may have just been a bad strategy for this world. But we've been doing Google for a long time, and I don't recall ever having any approach. There was a few times we would get an email and it'd be like, click to see this or that. And it always struck me as being incredibly generic advice. I have been on the phone with Google people because they would call. There was a period of time, it was probably about 2010, when they did some outreach and they would have somebody call, and that person never knew as much about the interface as I did. So I never got any sense, nothing about my interactions, which are just clearly went down a different path than your interactions, ever led me to think that there was any point in asking for help.
Well, okay. So let me ask you, that totally makes sense. And when we were talking offline last week, you had asked, you were like, should I hire a digital strategist? And I'm like, no, Paul, you're smart. You're obviously very intelligent in most ways. So I think you could learn it yourself. There's no point in paying somebody to figure this out. However, what I mean by that is learn it yourself, like you said. And then we use our Google person as a coach. And we have definitely, and again, same thing with Facebook, we've definitely had some people that don't have the highest IQs and they don't really get it and they haven't been super helpful. So you just have to keep pushing and deal with it and maybe ask for somebody else. Or, if you find somebody or you have to suffer, my experience, because with the Facebook side of it, which is what I know better than the Google side of it, as Lauren will tell you, years ago, like I spent 9 months just learning how to fly that 737. And so I got to a point where their CMO was like, God, you know more than most heads of agencies. That said, I still would talk to whoever my Facebook advisor was, and there was always just one little thing that they would bring up in our 30-minute conversation that I didn't know, or that would change the way I thought about things, especially because stuff is changing so fast. I would say, at least the way I think of it is, one, as long as I can get one little thing out of it that rounds out my knowledge. And two, in your world, this is kind of like this is sales, right? I mean,
yeah.
When you're selling a table, just because the first person that you talk to at a company maybe doesn't seem like they're going to want to buy it, it doesn't mean you stop talking to them. You keep pushing until you find, if you know it's a good idea, until you find that one person that is going to make a difference. And so that's how that's my experience, is how I've had to approach it with these large companies, is that eventually you will find somebody. It's just like hiring, it just takes a while. Sometimes you have to work through some duds.
Well, that's great advice. I'll tell you what, Lauren, here's the project. Let's see over the next few months whether I can actually make headway from where I am today and become Google's pal and get some useful help out of them. If it happens, that could change my life. It'd be great. Thank you. Aww. This is one of the most valuable things I've heard in months.
Do I get a board table? I'm going to get a boardroom table.
I want to hear from Karen. Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you've told us in the past that Google is your primary means of marketing. Blink. Any thoughts on this back and forth, especially the idea of whether it's best to do it yourself or to go out and hire a guru?
I'm the polar opposite to both Paul and Laura. I prefer to do nothing myself and to outsource everything. So I've always felt that way. I love to bring in the experts and have people who are very specific in one niche. And so we, over the years, had various people in-house. My business partner in particular was our internal SEO guru, and he would be buying AdWords and constantly monitoring them and spending a pile of money. And then we sort of decided we got to take marketing more seriously, and we built up an internal marketing team. But the problem is they never got the support that they needed within the company to be able to be really effective. So in the last year, we changed our whole approach to the thing, and we just decided to outsource the whole department minus really one person to really coordinate everything that we're doing externally. And we farmed out everything. And so we have, like one firm for our SEO strategy, another one for our content creation, another one for more. And all of this for us falls under sales and marketing, which is pretty standard. And for us, it's absolutely the way to go, because now all of a sudden, we don't have a couple of people who are limited in budget bandwidth and all the rest of it. And now we have these armies of people because they're small consulting firms and in some cases bigger, but they are so good at what they do that they come in and it's their job to be up to speed on how Google changes by the minute. And
let me ask you about that, Karen, because I've heard so many nightmarish stories about people trying to hire the right firm. Everybody pretends or claims to be a guru. Everybody promises to get you to the top of the results. But I've heard, one nightmare after another. It sounds like you found the right people. How'd you do it?
Well, it's like hiring, right? You don't always get it right the first time, but you have to be very careful and do a lot of vetting, a lot of interviewing, and know what you want and trust the people that it comes down to relationships in the end.
Did you figure out the right question to ask? How do you find out if somebody really is a guru?
Well, can I just say
it comes down to results.
It comes down to relationships, but it also comes down to money. I mean,
yeah,
right?
Well,
you're paying people but you're running
Laura,
a hospital.
It's way cheaper for us to do this than to hire internally. So we took exactly how we looked at it. It's like, okay, the salaries of the two people that we were paying, we take those salaries and that's all of a sudden our budget for these external firms, and we halved it. And yet we're getting, like 3 or 4 times the value because these teams, they're efficient, they're optimized, they know it, and the results are they're measured on these results. And if they're no good, then we'll fire them for sure.
So I have a question. What percentage of your revenues do you devote to this?
10%.
10%, just on the
not
market.
Very much. Yeah.
10% of your revenues is not very much to you.
Exactly.
If we look at sales and marketing combined, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, that's different. I'm asking just the marketing piece, just what you're talking about here. I'm just curious because I know how much I'm spending on it. So
what I'm talking about here, though, is it's mixed in, right? Because we have some sales training that's part of it. Like we see it as really connected.
And this does not include the salaries you pay to or whatever you pay to your actual salespeople.
Correct.
10%.
Well, yeah, and now you're making me question that, but it's roughly in that order of magnitude.
Okay, how many people do you have?
Paul, Karen doesn't
about
have
140.
Like a cost of goods sold.
140 people. You're a $15 million a year company, and you're spending 10% on that.
We're at 30 million. Yeah.
Okay, you're spending $3 million a year on that, which is fine, but you're not in the regular world with the rest of us here.
Why is that, Paul?
That's my point. Yeah. We're talking about
why is that?
Running
30
a hospital.
she's spending 78% of my revenue on that. So, I'm in a world
but
where
we're talking percentages, we're not talking dollars here, right? So if we're talking about percentages,
what's the difference?
The difference is it's a percentage of how you run the company, and you can hire, individuals. You don't have to hire firms, and so we need to hire. We're hiring bigger firms because we have bigger things, more stuff that we need them to do. The volume is higher. And so as we were smaller, though, we would hire individuals to do this very same thing.
I'm not knocking on you. We're having 2 different conversations because Paul and I live in a different world. Paul and Jay and Dana and I live in a different world than Karen does.
Right. But I've been there. I mean, we were a 10-person company for a long time. And how we did it then also is, while I said we tried everything. We tried doing it ourselves. We tried creating a small internal team. We tried outsourcing to companies, to firms, to individuals. We've tried it all. And
sure. I just mean that you have a scale. You have a scale that we don't. So even, first of all, we can't spend 10% because we have cost of goods sold. That's 50. I mean, our gross margin is only 48% or 42% of our revenue, or whatever that is. So because you're a services company, right? So you're going to spend more money on services and on creating those services. And then the other point is that for us, even if it was 10%, my 10% is just simply not going to buy as much as your 10%. Like I can't get 3/4 of a person. I can't get a half a person. I kind of can, but I can't get the same quality.
Sure you can. You can hire a consultant for 10 hours a month.
Yeah,
that's way better than having a person work 10 hours a month, right? Because they're actually going to be really focused and they're ready to go and they're more efficient.
Yeah, but do you understand? Like if I hire a consultant for 10 hours a month and they suck after 6 months, the risk for me is significantly higher than the risk is for you. So it's just a scale thing. Every investment is a riskier investment when you're small like we are. So every dollar. Yeah. I mean, and again,
I'm operating on a 40% margin. 60% goes into COGS. And so we just don't have that much money left over.
No, and you have to just be so careful. And obviously Karen's doing something right. I mean, we're the ones who are suffering, and she's the one who's driving a Bentley. But
well, she also has, I presume you have repeat clients too, and that's a different ballgame. And so do you, Laura. And we don't. I mean, we do somewhat. It's about 20% of our business, but we have to go find new people every day. And so it's a different business model.
Paul, have you ever tried going outside, outsourcing it?
I have outsourced aspects of it, but we have SEO efforts through my website designer. They do SEO too, and they actually, I think, have done a reasonably good job. I've separated out the AdWords because I've never really heard of anybody who had someone who could do SEO and AdWords and website design and be affordable for someone like me. So I was approached by someone, an AdWords consultant, a couple of years ago, and I can't remember why he found me, but he had some recommendations about how to get better results in terms of just ROI that were very good. One of the other things that happened was a couple of years ago, working with my website guys, we were able to build coding into our site that allowed us to really pinpoint who was calling us from what kind of sources. So we could, for the first time, see, okay, you got this call from organic and you got this one from this email or this. And so we started to see what these campaigns were actually producing. And then we set up our own internal tracking to look at the people who came from organic and the people who came from AdWords and see how many of them actually bought something. And it turned out that a huge percentage of something like 90% of our actual calls was coming from organic. And of the AdWords, the total effort and spend produced only one job in the year we examined. And so it's like, well, AdWords just isn't really doing anything for us. And so this was prior to cutting the budget too. And so cut the budget from $12,000 a month to $500 a month, and then start looking to see what happened. And one other thing about digital marketing, something that I could be wrong about this. I'm learning a lot today, but I'm very wary of making a lot of changes to an AdWords campaign because there's so many buttons in that cockpit that if you start pressing them all the time and then you look at the results, you don't have any idea which thing you did change the needle. And so you have to sort of do things one at a time and then wait and see for a little while to see whether that thing made any difference. And at least that's my perception of how you would go about trying to evaluate your efforts. So we found that cutting the budget by 98% had no immediate effect. It did start to cause a decline, or it was correlated with a decline in the traffic of about 3% a year over the next 2 years. But that period was also a period immediately after I stopped writing for the New York Times. And so it was like, which one was it that's causing this decline in traffic? Who knows? There's really no way to figure that out.
When you cut your budget 98%, did you put that money into another form of marketing?
I put it into my pocket because I hadn't been making any money. And I was better off. Yeah, because the company wasn't profitable. And then we stopped doing that. And I started doing some other things. And suddenly I've got money.
That's a happy outcome.
Yeah. And sales did not go down. They went up. We actually invested in internal processes to make a better use of the calls that were coming in. And a bunch of different internal things, and the company became much more profitable. And it wasn't all because of me cutting the AdWords budget. It was a packet of things. But at the end of the day, my income tripled. So, that's good for me. I like that. And having seen this slow decline in the organic, I went to my web guys and I said, well, what can we do about this? And they said, well, let's do 10 things. And they were all little adjustments to the website and tags and file names and all kinds of little tiny things to make the whole thing stickier to organic. And it worked. We turned that decline around at the beginning of last year, and we were starting to grow it again at about 5% a year, and it was going fine until COVID hit us. Make of that story what you will, but that's been my experience.
Yeah, I just wanted to pop in and say one last thing. With Karen, with the way that you guys spend money, I totally get that. And so I'm not criticizing. I want to be really clear about that. But it's really important to me, as I have watched too many small business owners in our industry making, let's say, grossing $1 million even, get really burned by outsourcing and finding some person who says that they're an SEO expert or that they're a digital expert. And you spend thousands of dollars. If you are making $1 million a year and even you are able to put 5% in, that's $50,000 for your entire advertising and marketing budget. So you can easily eat that up with a consultant. And my experience has been that, and we have outsourced, but most consultants that are willing to do work for a small business, they're not the same consultants that are going to be willing and interested in working for somebody like Karen's company. And they just don't have the same strategic mindset, and they don't provide the same value. Because if they did, they would go work for somebody like Karen's company, or they would work for a firm that's going to be charging $300 an hour, or $500 an hour, or whatever it is.
I actually totally disagree. That's not my experience. And so,
it's
and I
mine.
think we can't.
And you're in Seattle.
Yes, right. But you and I are two people, and the world is big. And so I don't think it's fair to generalize about all consultants.
I'm not generalizing about all consultants.
Well,
but you have
you
a software
said all
company.
Consultants.
The ones that I have worked with. And
okay, but you can say that, but you said all consultants, and I don't think that's fair, because I think if you have to vet them very carefully. And of course there's ones that are bad, and you've got to, just like hiring, fire fast and expect great results. And if you don't get them, then you got to leave them. And so we've had, over the years, there's lots of great independent consultants who are happy they don't have to work for my company. And we were not always how we are now. I keep saying that over. We were 10.
I know, Karen, but you have a sexy, tech company. Paul and I don't have, and even Jay, nobody who is aspirational and ambitious and blah, blah, blah. Very few of those people want to help sell yarn online. They don't want to help sell a boardroom table. They want the sexy startup tech company. They want to interface and do stuff with Google and blah, blah, blah. They don't want to do this stuff, the pedestrian stuff, the mom and pop businesses. That's my experience. I'm sure there are some people.
I want to throw in one more data point. There's a member of my business group who went on a digital strategy of hiring consultants and did grow his company from $4 million a year, and he just sold it at $26 million. And he did it by hiring consultants and sort of just like, I'm going to hire you. What do you want to do? Here's the resources. Did it work? Yes. You continue to work. No, you're fired. Where's the next guy? He was very brutal about it, but he got the results. But a big part of that was that he was able to get his manufacturing operation to the point where it was producing 60% gross margins. And so that he had money to pump into this. He didn't take much money out of the company himself, and he had a single-minded focus on growth that played out in a lot of ways. But it's not something that personally I would want to replicate, but it could be done. So and it's not a sexy industry. He makes custom spiral staircases. So I think that there's truth in both sides. But one is that if you're stuck at $1 million a year and you're counting on hiring a consultant to get you out of that, it's a very long shot proposition. And just because almost everything is stacked against you. And I would be very curious to hear whether, Karen, whether you think you're at 10 people, which I gather would be about $2 million a year. Now you're at 30 million. Was it just hiring a Google consultant that got you out of that fix, or what else did you do?
No, of course not. It's a piece of the puzzle. Absolutely.
Again, I want to make sure that the people that are listening, some of them are smaller, independent, don't have that 60% gross margin and can't, just not throw the money, but they can't reinvest those large amounts of money in. And I've just witnessed too many people throwing it away.
What should they do, Laura? A lot of them don't have the skills themselves either. What is the right course for that size business, in your opinion?
That's a great question.
I don't think that, Lauren, I don't think that there's any guaranteed path to success, particularly not on that road. And that the reality is that the vast majority of businesses who are stuck there are going to stay stuck there forever. And that's just the way the world is. And it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, in the way that I looked at it then and now is that, when you talk about having the knowledge, Lauren, it's that my time is way better spent focusing on the deliverables that we're producing as a company. So the actual consulting work that we're doing. And for me, the marketing side of it is like, it's not a good use of me to try to figure that out, because there are people who are way better and way smarter at it, which is why we would bring in individuals back then and why we bring in small firms now. And by the way, while I'm on here, I just want to clarify, I did get clarification that 10% includes our salaries for the BD team. That I wasn't sure if it did or not, so it does.
We are out of time. This was a really interesting conversation. Best of all, I got it on tape this time. So thank you all for that. I think we're going to come back to this.
Our pleasure. And I'm going to try to call Google. I'm going to see if someone will answer the phone. That's going to be my project for the next week.
If they don't, you call back every hour on the hour and tell them that you won't stop until they give you what you need.
Okay, we'll see how that works.
I'm with Laura. You got to ask for what you want over and over and over until you get it.
Over and over and over again. Yep.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening, everybody. This episode was produced by Jess Thuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Remember, we started the 21 Hats podcast to help business owners feel a little less isolated, to let them know they aren't the only ones fighting these battles. If you got something out of this conversation, please help us reach more people. Tell a friend, subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at 21_hats. And let me know if you have a question or a comment or a topic you'd like us to cover. My email address is lfeldman@21hats.com. See you next time.